Greetings, everyone. Greetings and happy Sunday. We hope everybody is feeling as well as you can possibly feel today, that you're at your highest level of mental, physical, and spiritual health on this Sunday. And we are so happy and honored to have you with us to embark on this journey we're going to engage in for the next 8 weeks of our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program Shakur and I do, sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. If you're here, I'm sure you already know that. But for the next 8 weeks, we're gonna delve into the book that I wrote, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. We're going to take it chapter by chapter. There are 8 chapters in the book. So we're going to start today with chapter 1, which is definitions, objectives of revolutionary community defense. And the reason why we wanted to do this was actually Shakur's idea. You know, she and I talk all the time about what we're going to do. And it was her idea because I was lamenting to her one day about the problem of study in this society and how, and this is not to blame people because we understand why the problem exists. So everything in capitalist society is form over essence. And what that means is that the only thing that matters in this society is how things look. It doesn't matter what's underneath it or what the core of it is, just how things look. As long as everything looks good, that's what people are primarily concerned about. And this is the reason why the society is dysfunctional, our families are dysfunctional, because everybody's really just focused on how things look. And if you grew up like I did, and you probably did, you know, your parents were really concerned about what things look like on the surface. And, you know, there wasn't really a lot of attention and effort placed upon digging deeper to get to the root of the problems that impacted us as a family. It was just all about appearances. And so because of that, you know, we've got a ton of people in this society who are not functional in terms of being able to comprehensively read and write. And a ton of people, I'm talking about millions of people, have become very good at functioning, being functional illiterates, meaning that they have jobs, they even go to school, walk around, are articulate, but don't really know how to study material, read comprehensively, and develop critical understandings of issues. Don't know how to do that. So our hope is, because part of what we want to do in our work is engage in a literacy campaign. You know, this is the most technologically advanced country on earth, but yet people here have less. If you've traveled around the world, you know this is true, less information than anybody else anywhere on earth. And so we want to help break that down. So that's why we're going to attack this by talking about the concepts in this book and breaking them down as well as we can do so in an hour each week for the next 8 weeks. So we're glad you're joining us, and we'll get started. We always start by paying tribute and respect to our indigenous family members. We have our wonderful comrades from American Indian Movement, Oregon, who are with us. Comrade Miko, we appreciate you, respect what you're doing. We tell people all the time about the work, and we just need to acknowledge, as always, that indigenous people are fighting for their land back, you all. That's it. That's what they want. That's what they deserve, and that's what they're going to get. They're not fighting for more casinos, for you to have air-conditioned casinos, to have better buffets when you go to them. That's not what they're fighting for. They're fighting for freedom, and freedom for colonized people is getting their land back that was stolen from them. So that's what they're fighting for, and we stand in absolute solidarity with them in getting their land back. And we know the best thing that we can do to help them get their land back is to fight for our land back, which is Africa. No matter where we live on earth, that's true. Because once Africa is free, the only way that can happen is by international capitalism and imperialism, the same thugs and crooks who harbor possession of indigenous people's lands, of Palestinian people's lands. The only way Africa can be free is for those forces to be weakened to the place where they will no longer have the capacity to control all of these people. And the same goes for their struggles. The more progress they make, the Irish struggle for Irish liberation of Ireland, that strengthens our struggle for one unified socialist Africa. So that's what we are focused on today. And we appreciate you joining us for that. And we always also honor our African ancestors, who are the only reason why we are here. There is no other reason. If it was left up to the so-called founding fathers, we would be all dead or still on the plantation working for free as chattel slaves. If it was left up to all these people who are upset about us protesting this backward, decadent society, we'd be dead or mass incarceration. The debt that we owe, we don't owe any debt to America. We owe nothing to America. The debt that we owe is to our ancestors who put their lives on the line so that we can move forward as a people. So we pay homage to them. And we are not just talking about the ancestors in the civil rights movement. Certainly we are talking about them, but we go much farther back beyond that. We are talking about the first Africans that resisted the colonizers who came into Africa 530 years ago, and all the way up to whoever is engaging in resistance actions today. And all of those who have passed on, who fought for us. That's who we mean when we say our ancestors, and we respect and appreciate them and acknowledge their sacrifices. And we see the only plausible reason for us continuing to exist is to carry out the legacy of dignity and struggle that they gave us, that we inherited from them. So we thank you all for joining us, and we'll go ahead and get started. Just our brief introductions that we do. Jamu, All African People's Revolutionary Party, is the sponsor of these weekly sessions, the organization that I've belonged to for 3/4 of my life, and that I will continue to belong to and do work to build capacity. We had a wonderful discussion in our cadre study circle this morning, and we talked about how when we all started several years ago, the things that you all take for granted today didn't exist. That there was no real collective concept that we were African people. Nobody really used that term on a broad scale, and that we engaged in work over these last 4 or 5 decades to institutionalize that consciousness among our people all over the world, and that we will never get credit for that work, but we know that we were on the front line doing it because we were doing it with each other. We know that we were on the front lines fighting for consciousness that the capitalist intelligence agencies were anti-human. Everybody knows that today. If I say CIA criminals in action, nobody gets offended by hearing that today. But I'm telling you, back when I first joined this organization, saying that, everybody would get offended because we had been conditioned to believe that the FBI, CIA, Mossad, all of these reactionary terrorist intelligence agencies were the G-men, the good guys, from the old movies, Elliot Ness, the Untouchables, all of that nonsense. And so we've come a long way, and it's been a lot of positive work that has brought us there. So glad to be here with Jakura every week doing this work. I'm also an organizer in the APRP, grew up in the organization, and made the conscious decision to dedicate her adult life to contributing to our work to achieve revolutionary Pan-Africanism. So just acknowledge and respect her being here, and that we are fortunate enough to honor our ancestors by having a positive parent-child relationship where we can talk every day and interact every day and look forward to planning our next trip together and engage in this work together. I mean, as a father, I could not ask for anything more than that. I could not be prouder. And again, getting back to the All African People's Revolutionary Party, we are an independent revolutionary Pan-African political party based in Africa. We are not based in the US. The US is not primary to us. We are African people who are scattered all over the world because of colonialism and slavery. And until Africa is free, none of us anywhere in the 120 countries that we've been scattered to will be free. So our base is our homeland, Africa. And that has nothing to do with where you are physically. It has to do with understanding where our power stems from. Our power stems from Africa. That's our mother. Until our mother is free and liberated, none of us can be free. How can you be free and liberated and your mother is oppressed and disrespected? That's just not possible. So we have to liberate our mother. That's the first thing we have to do. And we call that Pan-Africanism. And the definition of Pan-Africanism is one unified socialist Africa. And the strategy to achieve it in the book you see there, the Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare from our founder, Kwame Nkrumah, talks about uniting Pan-African formations on the ground in Africa who agree and are willing to work towards that objective of Pan-Africanism, one unified socialist Africa. So you have logos of some of the political formations on the ground throughout Africa today that we work closely with and we integrate completely with. And that's how we're going to win, you all. That's our strategy to do that. And we have chapters all over the world and relationships with other liberation movements, some I mentioned a little earlier, who are fighting also against the same beasts that we're fighting against. So we thank you for joining us. We look forward to breaking down this book. We believe that this book is a valuable toolkit to help anybody. You don't have to join the APRP, although if you're African, you should. I don't know why you wouldn't, but you don't have to. You can be anybody with any one other person. And this book is designed to help you figure out concrete ways that you can make a concrete contribution against the forces of the enemies that we are fighting against for justice and human dignity. So to get us started, I turn it over to Shakura.
Greetings all. Thank you so much, Daddy. It's truly a pleasure on my end as well. There's so many different choices that people could be making as they choose to come and join us every weekend. And that goes for you as well. So I thank you for allowing me to just humbly try to learn and sit at your feet as you share with me, not only your expertise and your wisdom, but how to think more collectively, how to change my ideologies when I am suspect of being individualistic. So thank you for just, always checking me and encouraging me to try to grow. That's because you and Mommy have fostered that environment for me that I'm able to be so hungry for knowledge and I'm not afraid of it. So I thank you for that, because that is a privilege. Not everyone is as brave as I am to want to try to seek more education from a political standpoint. So thank you for that. And thank you to the party for instilling it in you and Mommy as well. So you all welcome. We are so excited to talk to you today. This is such an important idea that we're trying to help you all understand. If you're not a part of an organization, we are calling you out, not because we are trying to isolate you, but actually because we're trying to help you gather with other like-minded people so that you can be a part of something greater than yourselves. So as I just said, this idea of thinking individualistically is extremely dangerous and will not contribute to the mass of humanity. And I'm going to give some examples in just a moment about why joining an organization is so important. I know you hear us talk about it every week. And if you've been with us since we started our first episode, then you know that we have continued to explain to you the importance of it. But I really want to help you see, even from media and society standpoints, other examples of what organizing looks like and what some of the benefits of when you do organize, so that maybe you can start to think of things a little bit differently. Martin Delaney, Carlotta Nzinga, Ya Asantewa, Marcus Garvey, Amy Ashwood Garvey, Amy Jock Garvey, W.E.B. Du Bois, Shirley Graham, Du Bois, Kwame Nkrumah, Carmen Piera, Teodora Gomez, Patrice Lumumba, Malcolm X, Kwame Ture, Mawina Koyate, and millions of Africans worldwide have figured out something. We have figured out that contrary to the constant negative propaganda that is beamed at us 24/7, 365 for 500 plus years, there is absolutely nothing wrong with us that revolution won't cure. Millions of indigenous people have figured out the same thing. The Palestinian people are up on this reality, and Irish people have figured it out. And even a large number of European working class people are determining that their best and most productive future does not include loyalty to the capitalist world empire. With this realization, our next steps are to determine how we create the conditions for the revolutionary change that we want and need. For the African masses, the All African People's Revolutionary Party has a program. That program is working to organize the masses of Africans into a worldwide revolutionary Pan-African political party. This is our solution because we believe that the total liberation and unification of Africa under scientific socialism is what will bring the necessary changes to us that we need while making our contribution to the worldwide struggle for justice and forward human progress. With that understanding, our next question is, how do we get the people where we live engaged in this righteous fight? For Africans and other oppressed communities within the US, quote, a guide for organizing defense against white supremacists, patriarchal, and fascist violence, end quote, is a manifesto my dad wrote in 2021. This work pulls from my dad's experience organizing with the All African People's Revolutionary Party, or the AAPRP, to provide a toolkit for people on the ground on how they can start with nothing more than sincerity and build revolutionary capacity to challenge the existing status quo wherever they live, while making that critical link to worldwide struggles for justice and forward movement. Next slide, please. What we think is one of the book's unique, and most critical offerings is its effort to challenge the notion that we cannot do anything until we have done everything. This concept we have been taught within these capitalist institutions, that capitalism is so strong and resilient that any effort to challenge it on any level must be perfect or it shouldn't even be discussed. Instead, this book makes the argument that all of us have the capacity provided to us by those who came before us to make a contribution, and that contribution requires all of us all the time. And once we realize this, there will be nothing this empire can do to stop us from winning. So for the next several weeks of our ancestors' voices, we will break down to the most common denominator each chapter of A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacists, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, in a way designed to glean off the most critical points that we are hopeful will inspire you to want to do the necessary work to guide all of us forward. Please tune in, stay tuned in, and be ready to learn and grow and develop your mind. Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of taking new information. If you have to write things down, make sure you have your notebook and your pen ready to go before 4 o'clock Pacific or 6 o'clock Central, whatever time zone you're in, so you can be ready. Please spread the word. Please carry this torch. Our future generations and the future of this planet depends upon our ability to get this right. And we all have a responsibility. As I just said, we're not just doing this work to benefit for ourselves. We're doing this work to benefit for the children who have not even been conceived yet, so that they one day can live in a world where they actually have value as human beings, not because of how much money or status they have, but because they are in fact human beings. And they deserve to live in a world where they are valued and cherished, because children are the future. I also would encourage us to think about all these different examples about how organizing is subconsciously exposed to us, but usually there's a tie-in where it's a negative reaction if we do organize. I actually want to raise some different examples and show you that even though the contradiction is there, for the most part, we still know that without organizing, there's nothing we can do or accomplish, because one individual human or one individual organism cannot make the change that is required. So for those of us that enjoy studying insects, we know ants, for example. Many times they have to organize on a regular basis to make things happen. And I'm using these very primary but also premature examples because I want us to understand that there are entities surrounding us that have already understood this concept. So it's really up to us, because if we are uncomfortable living in the world currently, we can do something about it. But we're not going to be able to do something about it on our own. We need to rely on one another. And there's nothing wrong with asking for help and working with other people. That's another capitalist model that we have to deconstruct. So we think about ants and we think about how they organize quickly if you leave food out, or if you are outside eating food, they figure out a way to get to your fruit, or if you have sugary substances, pies or cakes, things of that nature, they will find a way to get that. But you don't see one ant coming and carrying an entire tray of the cake. You see them coming in millions because they understand they have to move quickly and they have strategy. If you have an animal, specifically a dog, and maybe you take that dog to the dog park, every now and then I notice that my dog will start to pick up pace and run faster because my dog is trying to catch up with the quote unquote pack. So that's literally an example of dogs who have demonstrated to us for centuries that they understand traveling together is a way to enhance safety. It's a way to enhance food security. It's a way to enhance their ability as dogs. And even though my dog is so domesticated, when I take her to the dog park, they still pick up their running routine and they run together. They do not run individually. And if you do see a dog running individually, they more than likely will pick up the speed so that they can catch up with the other dogs. Because the idea of them being together is, I think, what fascinates and gives them a thrill. I don't study dogs on a regular basis, so I'm not sure exactly, but I have noticed that they prefer running together than they do individually. And then the last example I'll give you is just how we continue to explain this idea of organizing to our children, because as I just said, the youth are the future. So we want to make sure that we're encouraging youth to understand the importance of organizing. And by doing that, we are refuting and erasing the idea of individualism. That's what we're doing. That's the counteract to that. So for those that are Scooby-Doo fans, I remember an episode. This is one of the newer versions of Scooby-Doo, Be Cool Scooby-Doo. But there's an episode where Scooby is at this dog show and Daphne is about to be attacked by the monster. And they haven't unveiled who the monster is yet. So Daphne is about to be attacked and Scooby is trying to run because Scooby, of course, is scared of the monster. But then he realizes, I really need to save Daphne. I can't run away. I have to stand up. So he stands up to the monster and Scooby starts growling, but the monster is still coming and there's nothing that can be done. And then Scooby looks to his left and he looks to his right. And now there's all the other dogs standing next to him. So there's poodles and Pomeranians and all kinds of dogs standing in line with Scooby, all growling at this monster. And I know you know what happens next. At first, the monster wasn't intimidated because it was just one dog standing up to him. But when they all said, you're not going to come and attack this human, we have her back and we are not going to let you do that. Then it became a different story because it's easy for the monster to deal with one-on-one. But when it's 1-on-16 or 1-on-8 or however many dogs are at that dog show, it becomes a different scenario. And then the monster has to recalibrate and figure out, how am I still going to accomplish what I need to accomplish? Because they could really damage me and do some harm to me. So just encouraging us to use the examples that are around us and just thinking about what it means when we're trying to get things accomplished. If you're trying to figure out how to make changes in the world, the best place to start with that is joining an organization. And if you are trying to make changes in the world, then 9 times out of 10, you need to join an organization that's working for justice. Because if you're trying to make changes, then that means you have some justice like driven mindsets that you want to exercise, and you want to do that with other like-minded people who are constantly trying to push you and challenge you to grow, so that you can be uncomfortable at times, so that you really can grow, because that's really when you learn and enhance your life. And then you're able to use that same knowledge that you just obtained and apply it in real life in a praxis situation. So more to come, comrades. I love all of you. I hope that you stay safe, and we will be in touch. Thank you so much. And let's stay organized and ready for revolution. Asante Sana.
Thank you ever so much for that foundation, Shakur. Very much appreciated. And I just want to underscore the essence of what I heard you saying is the masses of people make history, not individuals. And that is the fundamental foundation of the book. And I would just start by saying, before we get into the first chapter, the first thing that happens in the book is I listed a long list of organizations, because everyone I know who has made a contribution to humanity has done it through an organization. I don't know a single person who's done it just on their own. And I understand the way we learn history in these bourgeois so-called educational institutions that we were forced to be brain dirtied in, that we were taught about individuals. We were never even taught about organizations. We were taught about George Washington. We were taught about Martin Luther King. And we were taught that the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King. You know, that's how we were taught. And so because of that backward process, a lot of us believe that, well, the civil rights movement is Martin Luther King. And capitalism has provided us that analysis intentionally. Because if we believe, as we do, I don't care if you admit it or not, this clearly, if you look at our actions, this is exactly what we believe, that history is made by individuals. Because we believe that, then what they have been able to do to us is, since we're not, Martin Luther King is a great man and he accomplished all this on his own. Nobody else did anything, it was him. He was the one that could articulate it. He was the one that had the message. He was the one that had the brain capacity to figure out what to do. Nobody else did, it was just him. And because they present history like that and we accept their version of it, we believe that. And so because we believe that, since we're not Martin Luther King, then we don't believe that we can affect change the way we have been taught to believe that he affected change. So we're discouraged from even making a serious effort to engage in that change. And then they isolate him individually and then they kill him. And so then the message from that is, well, you're not him, you can't do what he did. And even if you try to do it, we'll if you have any success, we'll kill you. And so the whole way that we interpret that on an unconscious level, because all of this is subconscious conditioning by the capitalist system, is that there really isn't any point in us trying to really seriously engage and struggle, because we're just not equipped to do it. And because they, push this individualistic narrative on us, we're constantly focused on our individual flaws and shortcomings. And we think that because we have those, that we can't be effective human beings on the planet. And so what the point of listing the organizations in the beginning of the book is to obviously to pay homage to those organizations. They deserve that, but also to combat this individualistic capitalist ideology that dominates all of us. I don't need you to admit it. It dominates all of us. I know it does. I don't even have to know you. And I know it dominates, because if you think about it, if you don't know and you think, well, I'm not individualistic, I guarantee you that when you face adversity, how do you respond to that? Most of us respond with the individualistic tactics that have been force-fed to us our entire lives. Like if we have a problem with alcoholism, we don't tell anybody. If we have a problem with money, we don't tell anybody. And I understand, like, all of these things come with stigmas. That's their whole plan, you all, to isolate us from one another. So we don't tell anybody, and we think that we can just deal with it on our own. And most of the time, we're not very effective at doing that. We have problems in our family. We're estranged from our children or our parents or whatever. We don't talk to anybody. We don't seek out help. We don't do any of that because the system has convinced us that the reason why these things happen to us is because there's something wrong with us. And so the point of acknowledging the organizations is that the masses of people make history. There's nothing wrong with anybody here, except that we haven't organized for a revolution to change this backward system. That is the only criticism I have of people in this world today. There is nothing wrong with anybody besides that. Like Shakur said, the only qualification is sincerity. Everything else you can learn. You can learn how to write. You can learn how to be a public speaker. You can learn how to organize people, to carry out tasks. You can learn how to build organizations. All of these things you can learn how to do, but you have to come to it with sincerity. Nobody can teach you how to be sincere. So that's the only requirement. So we mentioned the organizations to press the concept that we together is the solution, and we can do that. It doesn't mean you lose any of your individual your individual uniqueness. Of course, we want that. We don't want everybody to be the same. That's boring. We want everybody to come to it with your individual contribution as a human being. We're all different, and that's what makes life fun. But we can all come with our individual uniqueness, and together, that's what gives us the dynamism to create the capacity to achieve what we want to achieve. And the organizations that I've listed are all organizations that were able to do that, bring dynamic individuals together to form one united dynamic entity that can make a contribution. And since African culture is a continuum culture, indigenous culture is a continuum culture, Asian culture is a continuum culture, and even European culture is a continuum culture, because that's a universal law of human existence. So what that means is we know that the Universal Negro Improvement Association of Marcus and Amy Jock Garvey gave us the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Earl Little, the father of El Hajj Malik, El Shabazz, Malcolm X. And so that gave us, the UNIA gave us the Nation of Islam, which gave us Malcolm X. And Malcolm X gave us Ethel Minor. And Ethel Minor helped develop the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee's position on anti-Zionism. And that position influenced the anti-Zionist position of the All-African People's Revolutionary Party. And the All-African People's Revolutionary Party has shaped my life. And hopefully I can do my responsibility to do that for future generations. So this is why we keep saying, you all, the masses of people make history, not individuals. So that's why we start the book out that way, because we have to do battle with this concept of individualism. It is not working for humanity, you all. It is not. It's not helping us move forward. And so we have to wipe it out. And you have to understand the difference between being an individual and individualism. Those are two completely different things. And because, you know, a lot of times we don't study things, we just hear the word and we react. As Kwame Ture said, in capitalism, people don't think, they just react to stimuli. So that's a lot of times what happens. So I'm saying that because please don't leave here ignorantly talking about what they said. I can't even be an individual. I don't want to hear none. That's not what they said. They said being an individual is a wonderful thing, but individualism is an ideology based on the practice of prioritizing individual action above all else. That is the problem that we want to identify and wipe out. So that's what we're saying, and that's why we have the organizations at the front of the book. And as Malcolm X taught us, you know, history is best qualified always to reward our research. So we have to look at how things happened before to understand why things are happening the way they are now, which helps us develop a vision for what needs to happen in the future, right? And so, you know, we can sit here today and we can say honestly that, you know, we pretty much figured out there are limitations to what the human body can do. We know that you can't get on top of a 10-story building and jump off and bounce back up to the 10th floor. We know that. And if any of you believe that you can, because I had a guy that told me he could do it. I said, well, I'll go to a building and watch you if you want to do that. Well, you're trying to get me to commit suicide. I'm like, no, you just said you could do it. So you shouldn't be standing here lying, saying you can do things that you know damn well you can't do. I didn't fall in with the rain yesterday. So as far as I know, nobody can do that. If you can do that, then please demonstrate. And I don't know why you can do that and you're not using those powers to liberate humanity. That would be just a complete waste. So I don't believe that that's possible. So the body has limits, but the brain, we only use about 6% of its capacity. The other 94%, we don't even know what it's capable of. So since I know that, it's impossible for me to believe people when they say, and they say it all the time, well, you can't do that. Well, you can't liberate it. You can't unite everybody. You can't get everybody. You can't. People talk like that all the time. And it's like, we haven't even used 94% of our brain. So how the hell do you know what we can and can't do? You don't know anything. I don't even speak that language. Anybody that says what we can't do, I'm just disengaged. I'm not even listening to you when you're talking like that, because I don't talk like that in my life. If I talk like that, I've been dead years ago. So I believe that we can accomplish, Secretary said, we can accomplish anything. And so that's the basis of what the chapter 1 is about, is that we can do whatever we need to do to eliminate this problem. And plus, those of you who are like us are in Crewman's Terraeus, or if you're Marxist-Leninists, or if you're Maoist, or if you're any of these revolutionary ideologies, then you believe in dialectical and historical materialism. So if you believe in dialectical and historical materialism, then you know there's no way that something could happen one way and not be able to happen the other way. It's just not possible based on science. So if there was a way to get us in this oppressive condition, then that absolutely has to mean there has to be a way to get us out. So I'm not even trying to hear people talking about, well, there's no way we can, there's always going to be selfish people, there's always going to be oppression. There's no way that we can, do that and win, and you're just wasting your time. Well, you're just a sellout. So excuse my expression, but for people like that, I just tell them, you should just pull your pants down and bend over, because that's all you're good for. I'm sorry, if that offends you, that's your problem, because we got to wipe that out, you all. There's nothing wrong with us. We can accomplish anything. And if I have to shock you to get you to understand that, then damn it, that's what I'm going to do. Because we got to wake up. We got to wake up and understand that these people are convincing you that the problems in the world are your fault. And no problem in this world is your fault. It's their fault. They're the ones who decided to organize the world as their personal profit playground. And that is the cause of every single problem on the planet Earth. If you tell me any problem you can think of, I can show you. Just like the rappers, you yell out a topic and they can create a rhyme to it. You show us any problem on Earth and we can immediately show you how that problem is directly the result of this backward, decadent, capitalist, imperialist system. No question about that. So we are not the problem. We are the solution. And so that's what we're trying to get to. And we have to open our brains to be able to understand that. And that means we have to know who we are. Because if we don't know who we are, we don't know who we should be fighting against. And one of the fundamental problems that we talk about in the beginning of the book is using African people, for example. We don't know who we are. We think that our colonial situation defines us. African people are some of the world's best examples of Stockholm syndrome. We identify completely with the people who have enslaved us. We hold their names. My name is Carter. My name is Johnson. My name is Jackson. That's the slave master's name, fool. How could you be honored to carry the name of people who brutally owned your ancestors? I couldn't wait to give them their slave name back. I couldn't wait. I was barely legally old enough to do it before I could not wait to give them that back. And it was one of the best decisions I ever made. It was so liberating. I can't even imagine. My slave name, my people from Louisiana, so I had a French name because the French colonized Louisiana. and kidnapped all our people and brought us over there to work as chattel slaves. So my slave name was Dehout, and my first name was Richard Dehout. And I can't even imagine calling myself that right now. Those of you that know me by my name, that don't even sound right for me to tell you that was my name. And you know it don't sound right, because that's not who the hell I am. And the name you got is not who you are. And so, yes, not saying you have to change your name. You should. I don't know, again, I don't know why you wouldn't, but that's not the point. The point is we have got to know who we are. Because if we know that we are kidnapped Africans brought here to be chattel slaves, and we are on this plantation, then we understand that our primary responsibility is to fight to burn the plantation down. Not to, well, how can I get a comfortable room on the plantation? How can I get a comfortable job on the plantation? How can I get a comfortable house on the plantation? That's the problem. That's the problem, is that we're trying to fit in with the slave master, and then have the nerve when the slave, I read this story a couple of weeks ago, this football player, Brandon Marshall, and he bought this house in this exclusive European neighborhood in Florida, and he drove there to move into the house with the moving truck. And the European people saw him, they came out, like Shakur gave the example of the dogs protecting Daphne. Well, in this real life case, the European people in Florida came out at the gate of the gated community, refused to let them in. They didn't care. He's sitting there just like with a slave mentality. I bought a house here. I got the paperwork. Master, please let me in. And the white folks didn't care about that. They're like, we don't care what you bought. You ain't living here. We came here so that we could get away from you. We ain't finna have you moving here, and then another one moves in, and another one moves in. And then like Malcolm X said, before you know it, they're gone. They got to leave because they're not going to live around us. So they weren't going for that. And they told him that I'm playing the national football. We don't care. So, you know, it was hard for me to have empathy for the brother. I'm sorry. Like, why would you even want to move in somewhere like that and live somewhere like that and raise your kids? He got kids in that kind of environment? That's what you want? I mean, to me, they should have come out in white hoods with crosses to burn around his truck. They would have been justified if they would have did that. They should have did that. Because if we're so stupid in 2021 that we still don't understand that we are not just like everybody else here, then that's exactly where we get. And if that offends you, then that's because that's how you probably think. That's why it offends you. So we have got to know who we are in this society. That's the first premise that the book is talking about. And then once we understand that, we stand on our own, and we have to define our work based on our history and culture. So the enemy will tell us as African people, well, you don't speak the same language as they do in Nigeria. They eat different foods. They don't, you have nothing in common with them. That's what they will tell us. And a lot of us believe that. Oh yeah, you know, the master said we don't have anything in common, so it must be true. So we're not the same as those people. I'm an American. That's what I am. I'm an American. Well, the people here in America, these folks here will kill you if you try to live next door to them. Well, I'll just ignore that. I'm still just going to be an American because that's what I want. Because I want to identify with the winner, and my master is the winner. Well, see, this is the work that we have to do. Because as Nkrumah said, our differences as African people are far outweighed by our commonalities, right? And all you have to do is do what I've done and spend some time and resources traveling around the African world. I've been fortunate enough by working in the All African People's Revolutionary Party. I've been to about 27 countries in the world, a lot of them in Africa. And I've been around a lot of our people in the Caribbean, in Europe, Canada, all over the world, Central America, African people. And I can tell you, everywhere I've been, our people are 100% the same. Sure, we might speak a different language, of course. Sure, we might do things differently, of course. But fundamentally, how we interact in the world, how we interact with each other, our philosophical view of the world, it's the same fundamentally. So it's important for us to understand that, because that's the basis from which we build our effort to fight for our freedom. And this foundation permits us to develop and cultivate an independent worldview that neutralizes colonialism. Like, one of the proudest things of my life, and I've been able to accomplish a lot, but one of the things that I'm personally most proud of is that I have been able to institutionalize revolutionary Pan-Africanist thought. Like, I don't think about AOC or Bernie Sanders or Barack Obama or Donald Trump. I don't even think about those people. I have nothing to do with them. They have nothing to do with me. They're all the same to me. They represent the enemy. Some of them talk nicer, but they all represent the enemy. They all represent the system that's oppressing our people. So it's easy for me. I can just separate all of them. I put them all over there. I don't unite with any of those people. None of them are my friends, okay? And it's easy for me. And my friends are the masses of humanity who suffer from the nice ones and the mean ones. Suffer from all of them. Those are the people that I want to connect with. So it's easy for me. So because of that, like, I don't have all this confusion that people have. The police pull me over, I know immediately what's going on. And I've been pulled over plenty of times. I know immediately what's going on. And because I know what's going on, I know how to prepare myself to defend myself to get out. So this is why all of this kind of consciousness is so important. Because if you're confused, you get yourself caught up in a situation. Please don't hurt me. Please don't. I mean, I hate to see our people. I'm in tears seeing how our people suffer. I can't breathe seeing how our people suffer. Why are you doing this to me? This is what this system was built to do this to us. I hate to see us. I hate all these videos where these Europeans are just talking to us like we're dogs and we're trying to rationalize with them. Pick up a stick and beat the hell out of that devil. That's what you need to learn how to do, because when you do that, take it from me, they'll stop treating you that way. They'll stop treating you that way. Long as you're trying to use humanity, like Malcolm X said, you're speaking Chinese, they're speaking German, you will never communicate. You cannot use morality with a people who have no conscience. And we gotta understand that. That's all we're saying. We gotta understand that, y'all. So that's what we're trying to talk about. It's an independent worldview where we understand that humanity is all of oppressed humanity, no matter what color they are, okay? And the ruling class is the ruling class. And there are some Negroes in the ruling class. There are spokespersons for the ruling class. They're part of the bourgeoisie. Some people that look like us. So understanding that, and if you have an independent worldview, you understand that. So if you know that, they can't take you in with cheap symbolism. Oh, Barack and Michelle look so good. He plays basketball when we stay together. All these people have to do is sing a song and they got you all suckered in. That's all it takes, is singing a damn song and they got you all suckered in. You don't know those people. You can't even have a conversation with those people. You can't go to their house and talk to them. They wouldn't talk to you if you went to their house. They don't want anything to do with you. And if you had an independent worldview, you would understand it wouldn't be so easy for us to be hoodwinked because they look like us. And we're so hungry to fit at the master's table that the first slave that sells out and sits at the master's table, we want to identify with that. I mean, that's the sickest mentality that you can imagine. There isn't any greater sickness than that. But an independent worldview, you don't want to be at the master's table. You want to create your own table. That's what we're talking about. That's what we're trying to get to when we start this book. And this foundation also helps us and permits us to recognize and embrace a revolutionary vision for our future. And we understand when we say revolution, we're talking about uncompromising change for something better. That's all. And that's the foundation that we're talking about in that first chapter. That we have to create a foundation where everything's on the table and we're willing to change everything, leading with ourselves. We have to change ourselves. We have to figure out how to get rid of all this cowardice we have and all this inability to stand up and recognize what's true and stop trying to pretend, well, your truth is your truth. Get rid of all that nonsense. and just stand on truth. That's what we have. That's what a revolutionary vision speaks to. And, you know, speaking of revolutionary Pan-Africanism and the work of the AAPRP, you know, this represents a great manifestation of that. You know, the thing that I'm so thankful for about spending my entire life in this organization is that our work has always been independent of this system. So it's allowed me to normalize that, normalize a consciousness that has a operational functioning outside of the propaganda mechanisms of this system. So at this stage, whatever they say, I'm automatically questioning. I don't believe anything they say. They say the sky is blue. I'm looking at it and developing the skills to be able to do that effectively. That's what we need. And if you do that, then you can arrive at the point where you're like, okay, this makes sense, but that doesn't make sense. And here are the reasons why. In this direction we need to go with this. This is the foundation we're trying to lay in the book. And then when we talk about going back to Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare, we talked in our cadre circle meeting this morning, we talked about how the handbook was written in 1968. And as revolutionary cadre, it's our responsibility to advance that work. That work is 50 plus years old. So a guide for organizing defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, and fascist violence is just simply my one humble attempt to make a contribution towards building on Nkrumah's work. That's all. And saying that Nkrumah talked about how we should unite Africa under one unified socialist Africa. And the strategy to do that was uniting all these Pan-African formations on the ground. And so for me, living in the United States, my question is, how can I get our people here engaged in that vision? Because they're not in Africa. Most of us here have never been to Africa, and a lot of us here never will get there. And we've been taught not to want to know anything about Africa, so we don't study, we don't know anything about Africa, nothing whatsoever. And so how do we confront that? How do we address that? That was my question. And then for people that are not Africans, how can we create a template that they can use? Because we're not struggling and fighting in a vacuum. We're a human society. We're in unity with all people, no matter who. We're in Europe, Asia, the Americas. If they are for justice, we're in unity with them. So maybe we can provide them with a template that can help them get their communities organized. That was the fundamental foundation of chapter 1, is establishing those things that I just said and doing that so that we could use those tools to help us move forward. Because like I said, Nkrumah's book was in response to the emergence of neo-colonialism in Africa. And it was a strategic response for how we organize against that to unite Africa for revolutionary change. And so a guide for organized defense against white supremacist, patriarchal, and fascist violence as a response to Nkrumah's book is essentially a model for how we can organize Africans and other people in the US to make that same contributions. And I say in the book that our people in Canada, our people in Europe, our people in Central America, the Caribbean, and South America, we need a guide from those segments of the world as well. And I'm talking to some people in Barbados right now. They want to write one, and I'm working with them to help them put one together. This is exactly what we need. It's all the same, but we have to be strategic in how we approach it. And so a guide is also, like I said, a template for the other oppressed communities to say, okay, this is what we need. And we're doing that work too. I mentioned before, we had a European comrade who came to an AAPRP orientation. We had to tell him, you can't join AAPRP, it's for African people. But we got something for you, because we need white people to keep other white people out of the Proud Boys and the 3%ers and the neo-Nazis and the police force and the US military. So here's a template for you to organize your people before those terrorists get to them. So this is what the first chapter is essentially establishing, is the necessity to do all of these things, you all. And if we establish that necessity, that is the reason why we need revolutionary community defense, because what it'll do is it'll create a mass force of people who can link up to the international struggles for justice. For African people, that's the worldwide fight for one unified socialist Africa. In our view, that's what that is. For European people, it might be a worldwide solidarity of European people fighting against colonialism and the exploitation and helping to fight for land reclamation, helping Europeans, helping indigenous people get their land back, helping our people in Azania, what you call South Africa, get their land back, helping our people in Australia get their land back, helping the Palestinians get their land back, helping the Irish get their land back, and making sure that Europe is a society where justice prevails over imperialism. That's what that may look like. And for all the colonized people, we just said it. So that's what the first chapter is really about. And revolutionary community defense is simply a tactic, you all, to help us get to that point. And so that's all we're saying. If you want to summarize it all in a nutshell, we're just saying that you yourself as an individual, one person, if you can connect with at least one other person to do some positive work, then we can help you realize how to build capacity to fight to achieve all of the things I just got through talking about. That's all it is. That's all chapter 1 is saying, in essence. And so we asked the question, who in their right mind would be opposed to that, would see any of that as a negative, would see something wrong with us being able to do that? Who would do that? These are positive things that we need to accomplish. So we just say, again, that chapter 1 is you don't need a lot of people, you don't need a lot of experience, you don't need a lot of anything. You just need sincerity, and you need to be willing to look for people to work with. That's all. Those are only 2 things you need. Sincerity, look for people to work with, and then we can take it from there to build the capacity to fight back against empire. That's chapter 1. And we want to invite you back next week for our Ancestors' Voices, the 26th of September. We're going to go into chapter 2, which deals with Africa today, an assessment of what's going on in Africa today and the African diaspora. And I don't care, even if you're African and you're confused and you don't see yourself as African, you still want to encourage people to participate in this, because everything we do in this capitalist society is connected to Africa, whether you know it or not. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And we're going to talk about it in the context of why it's important to contextualize that in a political consciousness framework. So join us for that. And please let people know and go to our aprp-intl.org website. You can get information about the party. There's plenty of information there about the APRP, our women's wing, the All African Women's Revolutionary Union. We have exciting things going on. We have an anti-patriarchy task force in the APRP, and we are about to submit our proposal for an anti-patriarchy book additions to our book list, and we're very excited about that. So we're doing great work, and we encourage you to join the APRP if you don't have an organizational home. And my site, where you can reach out to Shakur and I at betterworld.me, donate while you're there. But there's articles there that I've written as well. And all of these videos of these events are housed there, so you can get them. And I'm on the editorial team for hoodcommunist.org. Every Thursday, we come out with new articles. Every other Thursday, this coming up Thursday, we have Telegram events. We have a radio program. We're trying our best to get revolutionary, independent African perspectives out there, you all. So please help us. Tell people about, if you haven't told anybody about our Ancestors' Voices, if you haven't told anybody about Hood Communist, I mean, you're doing a disservice. Help us out. Spread the word. Talk about that like you talk about what you saw on TV or what movie you saw. You should, for every person you talk to about a television show or a sporting event, you should talk to 5 people about this stuff we're talking about now. And we have all these broadcasts: APRP Pantula, APRP Revolutionary African Women, Raw, Forward Ever on Spotify, APRP New Mexico news broadcast Thursdays, 12 noon Mountain Time. Please support those. Tell people about all of them. Even if you don't like me, that's fine. I am not suffering from low self-esteem. I can handle not being liked. I don't want to be liked by all of y'all, believe me. So that's okay. But don't hold that against the other APRP comrades. Tune into their programs and spread the word, because it's all good. It's all for the same thing. And, you know, again, I have my book there. Buy it if you haven't. Get with some people. We'll help you bring this stuff. The next eight weeks will help you figure out how to use that information concretely. I'm working with 4 different groups in 4 different cities right now doing that. And I'll take on more. I'll take on as many as possible. So if I can do that, you can find one other person to work with. Even if you just go out on the street corner with a sign, you can do that. Learn something from our shelterless folks. Go out on the corner and stand on the off-ramp and say, I need one person to talk to me, and then talk to somebody, meet somebody, do that. It'll work. If you say you can't meet nobody, there's a way to meet people. If you're serious, it'll work. So thank you for joining us. Come back next week. If you felt offended by anything, that's probably good. Equate that to how you feel when you exercise and the burn is really bad, because your muscle is being pushed, and that's good. We need that. We all need that. It's a good thing. So forward ever, backwards never. We appreciate everybody. We look forward to seeing you. Tell folks, enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. One unified socialist Africa, capitalism. You definitely already know that it has got to go. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday evening. Good night.